Hello, 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 everyone. It's Dr. Tamara Beckford with the Dr. Tamara Beckford Show. Yes, I am super excited. I have one of my sister docs on today, and we're both emergency medicine. Yes, we did it.
Yes,
EM, light up.
yeah.
Yes, this is going to be exciting. Now, we understand that, let's just put it like this, it's just been crazy in the world of medicine overall. It's just chaotic. And this sister doc here, she's like, you know what, I'm going to bring all of this back, bring back the love, the joy of medicine. I'm going to help you all do this. So let me show you all that my sister doc has in store for us today. You know, she has built her own school. She's the CEO and founder of Med School for the Soul. We'll talk about why she did that. She is a graduate of Temple University School of Medicine in Philly. So all my Philly people, stand up. Hello, Broad Street. And she did her training in emergency medicine, as I mentioned, at the Medical College of Pennsylvania. So, yes, still in Philly. All my Broad Street people, hello, hello, hello. She was just down the street from my alma mater, Thomas Jefferson University Hospital, Center City, Broad Street, all of that stuff. Alrighty. Now that we've given all our shout out to the Philly people, we're going to take it back. We love you, love you, love you all. So, this wonderful doc, like I said, she's the CEO and founder of Med School for the Soul, where she is putting the heart back in healthcare, one doctor at a time. Let's put our hands together for the one and only Dr. Gigi Abdel-Samed.
Oh, oh my gosh, I need you with me everywhere.
Hey, I love it. Like we said, putting the heart back in there with a clap. You're going to have your own soundtrack, one doctor at a time.
Yeah, hallelujah.
So tell us, Dr. Samed, we are here, we're emergency meds, we're down at this portion of our life, but it all started somewhere. It all started
Yeah.
somewhere. So take us back as to what made you decide to be a doctor in the first place.
Yeah. So I was born in Egypt, and we used to go back every summer to visit my grandparents. And somewhere about age 10 or 11, that summer, I just had the worst stomach ache. And I suddenly couldn't eat. And I guess I must have lost about 10 pounds. And it doesn't sound like much, but I guess when you're a scrawny 10, 11-year-old kid, 10 pounds is a lot. And I remember my parents going, okay, no, this isn't right. We're going to go see the doctor. And I kind of looked at them and I said, well, but Dr. Fuchs is in Connecticut. How are we going to go see him? And I loved him. He was such like the exemplar of a family doctor. He knew every single one of us in the family. And so my dad said, no, we're going. And it was that age where, dads get kind of funny about hugging their daughters. And so when he picked me up and he carried me, must have been a good mile and a half the whole way, I thought, oh my gosh, am I dying? Like, Daddy is, I haven't had to be carried since I was a kid. And we got to this old apartment building in Cairo, and he proceeds to climb up 5 flights of stairs. And every flight he goes up, my heart is like, this is not like America. There is no glass walls. There is no comfy seats. There's no magazine. Like, what's happening? And we get up there and he opens the door and it's literally just a living room. And my heart is like, and unconsciously, I'm like, oh God, like, what kind of doctor is this? I'm not sure I want to be here.
Yes.
And as we're sitting in that waiting room there, it was just full of women, some wearing the burqa, some not. And they had chickens, they had bread, they had coffee beans, they had fava beans, they had whatever they had, eggs to pay this doctor. And I was like, oh, like, this doctor doesn't even merit money. Like, what's happening? And in that moment, I looked across and there was a woman with a baby on her lap. And I remember thinking that the baby looked blue. And I was like, I don't think I'm that sick. And I was like, Daddy, we can go home. I don't think I'm that sick. And he looks at me and says, no, we're staying. And of course, in retrospect, as you know, years later, it's like, oh, how blue does a baby have to be for a child to notice? That's terrifying.
Yes.
And when we finally got in there, I don't remember to this day if it was a stretcher, if it was a dining table, if it was what. But I lay down. I don't remember his face or his name, but when he put his hand on my stomach, for the first time in 2 weeks, the pain went away.
Wow.
And I was, in that moment, I got it. He wasn't a doctor there because he couldn't get better. He wasn't there because he couldn't make money. He was there because he actually cared about people. And when I came away from that experience, I said, I want to be that. I want to be the person that when I touch someone, the pain goes away. That's all I want to be. And I said, what is that? What do we call that? And they said, it's being a doctor. And I said, that's it. So that was it. Age 11, like, I'm going to be a doctor. Now, I wish I could say the pain stayed away. It didn't. It came back. And he diagnosed with a parasite from the Nile River. And I was on medications for a couple of weeks and it went away. But that was it. Like, that fuse, that match, that light was lit in my heart and I was going for it. Like, there was nothing that was going to stop me from being the light for people that he had been to me. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that, like someone says, just so powerful. We're having some people saying hello, 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 Dr. Carolla. It is an absolutely powerful story. Can you imagine as an 11-year-old feeling that just probably magic? And how much power did this person have that they touched and then you really felt better? And it's not that you went in there with a lot of confidence. So, it wasn't, completely mental. You went in there like, oh, she's going to be able to do it. You went in there with trepidation.
Oh, it was the opposite. I was like, I don't know what this person's going to do for me.
And he was able to have such an impact that now you thought after, like, what is this person is? What's that profession is? I want to be able to have that impact on people. That's just powerful. So now, you have figured out what that is. It's called a doctor. And you're like, oh, okay. Alrighty. So now I'm 11. I want to be a doctor. And then you're carted off, did all the things that we need to do. And you're in med school.
Yeah.
Now there are so many different professions out there, but you chose emergency medicine. All right, tell us that story.
Okay, so this is a funny story. So I always thought I was going to be a pediatrician because I love kids. And then I got to my pediatrics round and they put me on the cancer ward. And I, being a naive kid who had never set foot in a hospital until medical school, thought, oh my God, is this what pediatrics is? Every time a child sees me coming, they're going to cry. I'm like, I can't do it.
Oh, no.
So that, yes. And it's so funny, like these moments in time that can change the trajectory of our lives. And I was like, oh no, I can't do this. So then I was like, well, what else can I do? So I tried internal medicine. I was like, okay, I'm bored. I'm like, I'm doing this. It's like, I got to send labs and wait a week for the result. And I've got people coming back for the same thing and they haven't done anything. I'm like, but I didn't know then. Like, oh. So then I tried surgery and, this is what, 27 years ago. And surgery was, well, mainly male at the time. And it was I just remember thinking, wow, they have worse PMS than I do. And I'm a woman. And of course, I had no clue that it was actually sleep deprivation and just the brutality, like the sheer grind of what they did. And then also having to be up and be there at 3 a.m. as the medical student. And they're like, yeah, but when you're an attending, you're done by noon and you can go play golf. And I'm like, I'm going to be exhausted by noon. I've put in a full day.
Yes.
And they were like, you can't touch a patient. You can't do procedures for X number of years. And I was like, well, that's no emergency medicine. I'm like, I want in, I want now. And so then I tried, psychiatry rotation and they were like, no, you cannot do psychiatry. I was like, why not? Like, you believe everybody. I remember being in Philadelphia, this one gal coming through and she was put on an involuntary psychiatric hold. And she's like, the vet wouldn't give me back my dogs. And I'm on my way to DC to become an interpreter at the UN and I speak 6 languages. And I was just Oh, I
Oh,
was irate
wow.
on her behalf. I was like, what do you mean they wouldn't give you your dogs? That's not okay. So I called the vet and he was like, wait, you think I'm withholding a dog from its owner? I'm like, yeah, that's what she said. And he was like, no, she threatened my staff. She did all. I was like,
Oh, wow.
oh, I'm
The
sorry,
story is
sir.
different.
That's a little different than what she told me. So then I call her brother and he goes, wait, you think she speaks 6 languages? I'm like, yeah. He goes, she can barely do English well. And I was like, well, most of us who speak multiple languages don't speak English that well. And I was like, okay, psychiatry is not
Is
for
that
me.
it? They're like, ma'am,
Whew. Yeah, they're like,
ma'am.
no, no. So there I am at the end of my 3rd year of medical school. You've got to declare your specialty so you can start
Mhm.
applying. And I remember telling my best friend, Farzana Tabrizi, I was like, what do I do? And she's like, why don't you do emergency medicine? And I looked at her and I said, what is that? And she was
Mhm.
like, that's what I'm going to do. And back then, I guess it had only been around maybe 20 years.
Yes, a very
And
new specialty. Mhm.
yeah. And so the first rotation of my 4th year, I got to do emergency medicine at Temple.
Mhm.
And gosh, some of the docs, like, Kate Halpern, who went on to, I think she's at Emory as a residency program director. Like she was my hero. She was this woman. She was calm. She was amazing. She was beautiful. She was powerful. And I remember that being in the emergency department, they would say trauma PT1, trauma PT2, trauma patient 6.
Mhm.
And that day, when it got to trauma PT6, it was all hands on deck, including me. And
Mm.
in that moment, it felt like the tagline for the Peace Corps, the toughest job you'll ever love. And I was like, oh, this is it. I can
Mm.
step in, I can create calm out of chaos, I can make a difference, I can create safety in the middle of fear. And I was hooked. It was like, whew, done.
Yes,
Sign
I
me up.
found it. Yes, I found my people.
Yes. Ooh, we know it. Like you just feel that. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I love it. I love it's interesting because emergency medicine encompasses so many of the other specialties. So now, even with that skill and that day, that patient that you from the psychiatric patient, we still get those patients, but now you're skilled enough to say, oh, okay, yeah, thank you, ma'am. I recognize that you were in manic phase at that point, as opposed to, earlier in your career. And it
Mm,
also speaks to the exposure, right? It speaks to exposure. If you think about your life up until this point, you got exposed to a doctor, hadn't known if you had not met that doctor in Cairo, who's to say if you would have
yeah.
interacted and wanted to do medicine. And then
Mhm.
throughout the specialty too, you got exposed, and exposure is so important because you found out what you liked and what you did not like, most importantly.
Yeah.
So you're not just following along with the crowd. You found out like, this might not be for me. I might need to go in the other direction. And then you found your people, my people, our
Yeah.
people, which is the EM.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
I love how you describe it, creating peace through the chaos, because that's one of the things that occurs in emergency medicine. And from the outside it appears very chaotic, but for us, we have this inner peace because we're working
Mhm.
on a system to ensure that we can provide the best care in the short period of time, because we know
Yeah.
the window is short to take care of all these
Yeah.
wonderful people. I love it.
Mhm.
So now, how would you say that experience of learning how to create peace in chaos
Mhm.
led to the med school for the soul?
Yeah. And I love that you termed it peace because that inner peace is everything. And so I went through burnout, and that
Mhm,
burnout took the form of addiction. So this
mhm,
was 2005 when I first came out with Ambien. It seemed like the holy grail for finally I can get something to help me sleep for 3 or 4 hours during the day for my night shifts that won't have an
mhm,
effect that's not addictive.
mhm.
And of course, yours truly got addicted to the thing that's not addictive. I'm like, seriously, are you kidding me?
Oh
Um,
no.
And so going through that burnout and through the addiction, it was such a powerless feeling for those of us who have like brilliant minds and willpower that had gotten me through, 10 years of schooling and another 10 years out in practice, and to have this thing latch in and to feel that loss of integrity and that loss of just, prescribing it for myself and not being able to function without it was just, it was brutal. And what it did is it translated the powerlessness I felt on some level into an actual powerlessness. And, what I do with medical school for the soul is I say that I pop physicians out of the matrix. So the Matrix Part 1 is one of my favorite movies, which is popping us out of the illusion. Like, it feels like similar to what we do when we're in that inner peace and you see the chaos around. We are the eye of the storm. And so, when we go through this, but back then I was creating calm for others, but I did not have the calm for myself. I didn't have the inner peace for myself. And so going through the burnout and the addiction, I had to come face to face with all of the labels, all of the masks, all of the personas, all of the rules that I had created for myself to be a good doctor, to be acceptable, to compete with the men in the same practice. And
what were some of those, because this is absolutely a story that transcends just you, there's so many, and it transcends just the experience transcends through different specialties, and it also through different professions, because many are feeling the same. So when you got to the point that you were feeling powerless and you looked back, what were some of the different phases that you noticed that brought you there?
So I think the very first moment of crisis wasn't even a conscious one for me, was when I graduated residency, became an attending, and went from making $30,000 a year as a resident working 120-hour weeks to making, I don't know, that first year $400,000, which was, it's different now with insurance and everything, but it's back then it was this shock. And I went from working 120 hours a week to working 40 hours a week and going, wow, what do I do with myself the other 80 hours? And it's the arrival fallacy of like, I get there and suddenly everything is going to be worth it and everything's going to be perfect. But I got there and life was empty. I didn't remember who I was. Do I like to dance? Do I want to learn a language? What? Wait, that's acceptable? For going through residency where you barely have time to pee or eat, to now be given this, it was anticlimactic.
Yes.
It was like I summited Mount Everest and found out it looked exactly the same as sea level Los Angeles. And it was this sort of like, was it worth it? So I think that was the first. And, in the program, I call it the 7-year itch. About 7 years out, we lift our head up and go, how did I get here? It's not just in marriages, it's in our lives. We go, every 7 years, we're a whole new physical body. Absolutely. Every cell has been changed, and we look around and go, whoa. So I would say that was the first step, was the anticlimactic, the arrival fallacy, is this really, this is not what I dreamed of as that 11-year-old little girl. I haven't healed a single person. Have I even made them feel better, other than words of, I feel better, I sent them to surgery, or I was like, I haven't healed anyone.
So you start questioning yourself, right? You're questioning all that you have done. Have I really done all of this, or is this just an illusion?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
It also then turned into resentment, a low-level resentment. And the thing is, on the surface, the other part of it that comes up is we have amazing lives. We've achieved so much. Everybody puts us on a pedestal, and they tell you that you're living an A+ life, when inside you're like, no, this is a C+ at best. And then it puts us in this shame of like, I can't speak and say I'm unhappy because I look like an ungrateful person.
Yes.
So I think that was the second part, was the silence and the feeling shame around what I'm feeling. So not only am I feeling sad or angry or frustrated or resentful, but now I'm beating myself up for feeling sad, angry, all of that. And really, depression is anger turned inward. And so the anger in us that we cannot lash out, or, we don't want to put it through our family, to our spouses. We don't want to put it to our children. We don't want to put it to our patients. And suddenly it has nowhere to go but inwards. And it becomes
a great observation. Depression is anger turned inward. That's very powerful. So now you're at this phase where life is just like, you've arrived and you're looking around and saying, is this it? And is this all that it will always be?
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, it's so challenging when you're in this phase. And I'm glad that we're talking about it, because so many people have felt that, we, myself included, when it's just like you feel ungrateful for saying that this is not all that I want to be. I'm happy that I made it this far, but I know there's more for me. And it's just like, well, why aren't you happy with what you have? You have this great profession. When you say that I'm a doctor, everyone says, wow. But inside, you're just like, yeah, but I'm just Tamara, Yeah.
And inside, I'm just Gigi, and I'm not the Gigi I know I can be. There's something missing.
Yes.
And in the fact that we can't put our finger on it, that 5% missing. And it's like we gaslight ourselves out of our own emotions. We're like, oh, no, you're not depressed. That's not, you don't have a right to feel that. And, you said I've arrived, and there's a saying that says, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. So the life may look the same, and yet the internal landscape has shifted so much that before I was creating calm out of chaos and performing and trying to take care of people, but it came from a sense of not good enough. It came from a sense of proving. It came from a place of lack. So no matter what I did, it was like trying to get to that ideal, that pedestal, that perfect doctor, the doctor that healed people with touch. Where now I create calm out of chaos, and I take care of people, but it comes from a cup that's full and overflowing. And so if a patient is nasty or has a bad day, it means nothing to me. It's like, okay, do I feel bad for that? But, true compassion comes from neutrality. And yet before, my compassion would be knocked off center by, I feel bad, but then if you were angry, then, I'm going to forget it, anger. And I would lose that inner peace, that center, that calm. So, this is really just the culmination of my journey. And, I don't want medical students and residents to have to go through what I did. Like, here's everything from my heart that I've been through. Let's keep you, let me tell you what it's really like out here.
Yes.
The things they don't tell you in the books.
And it's truly speaking from experience and then bringing that experience back to others. And rest assured, we understand that sometimes some people still do have to go through it themselves, but going through the process with enlightenment is different than going through the process in the complete dark. At least you might be able to acknowledge and recognize, oh, this is this phase. I'm noticing a pattern. Wow. It appears I'm entering this phase. This is the phase that Dr. Gigi was talking about. Wow. These are some of the pitfalls that I might need to look out for. Am I entering into this? How do I pull myself out before I get too far? Especially since a lot of this stems from deep within, which starts with a lot of emotions. And as doctors, we're overthinkers by nature. Let's just be honest.
Yeah, just a little bit.
A little bit by nature. So now, you have this wonderful school, med school for the soul. And you've had this school for approximately around 5 years of, that you've done this. You've done others, ventures, and, you've been an entrepreneur for many years. using your skills in coaching and your life experience, and you've culminated this and really put this together. Med school for the soul, putting back the heart in healthcare. So, one doctor at a time. If you had, like, what are some, or who are some of the doctors that you really can see this helping? Like,
Oh my gosh.
someone out there who is going through this right now. Tell a
Yeah.
friend that Med School for the Soul is here. Let them know.
Yeah. They're 7 to 10 years out. They're just at the beginning of that niggling, nagging sensation of something's missing. But, this is really, it's to normalize so that when they go through it, they know they're not alone and they don't end up in physician suicide.
Yes.
Like you said, it's a roadmap to, it's okay. Others have been through this and come out the other side. So they're going to be someone maybe 5 to 7 years out of residency, coming out of that phase of like, how did I get here? Maybe, for me, it's women physicians, and they're starting to go, oh my God, how do I balance being a mom and being a doctor? I feel guilty when I'm at home, and I feel guilty when I'm at work, and there's just no peace.
Yes.
And they're starting to look around and go, what about me? Where am I? Who am I? Where did I get lost? Or they have that low, like, dissatisfaction. They don't feel fulfilled in medicine anymore. It didn't deliver everything they thought it would be. Or they're starting to think, oh, forget it. There's no point. I'm powerless with the administration and the metrics. And, I just kind of give up. And now I feel it's that dread of like, I have to go back to work.
Yes.
When you
But
start
sitting
to
in
feel
the
that.
car for 15 minutes before entering a building.
Yeah, exactly. 15 minutes before entering the building, and then at the end of the day, just feeling so wrung out. There's nothing left. And then we feel free to like fall apart and not do the things with our family, because that's the only place in our lives we're allowed or granted any grace. And then we feel guilty. So I would say those are the biggest kind of flags to look for, is if that's, because the thing is, we talk to each other, we're like, oh, I have a great life. My life is better than 95% of people. And yet that 5% that we're missing, it will grow and fester, and like catch it early instead of waiting till it has to be huge and insane. And I self-destructed, and I want people to not have to go through that. And that was, 15 years ago. And this is the journey, and I want to walk hand in hand. So if you're feeling like, I don't even know if healthcare is for me, the 8-week program will help you decide. And if you still decide it's not for you, that's great, but let it be your choice, not a giving up, not a powerlessness. Because just like in medicine with our patients, when they have to make hard choices, I tell them there is no wrong choice, just the one you can live with. And it's
do you mind telling our viewers and those who are listening, when you say that you self-destructed, like, when you were at your lowest point, what was going on?
Yeah, of course. I have no secrets, because secrets kill. And I learned that. So at my lowest point, I was using Ambien. I was one of the people that would walk, sleep drive, and had no clue that I'd done that, because I lived by myself. I was prescribing it for myself. And the insanity of it is my body became so used to it that at the end, within 6 months, 8 months, I was going through 120 pills every 3 to 4 days. Wow. Which was insane. And you would think, how are you functioning? But I was literally taking it to prevent nausea, vomiting. When I finally did go into withdrawal, it had gotten to the point where I barely made it through a 12-hour shift without taking it. And I went into withdrawal an hour before the end of my shift, and I couldn't speak. I was sweating. I couldn't use one arm. It looked like I was having a stroke. And eventually it got to the point where I wasn't even taking it to feel good or to sleep. It was just to prevent the withdrawals. And when I finally went through detox and everything, I went 3 days without sleep, had a seizure on the 4th day, went 3 more days without sleep before I finally got this out of my system enough. And that was insane to realize that something as innocuous as Ambien being touted by the drug companies as non-addictive was just as bad and had the same issues coming off of it as alcohol, which I didn't drink. You know, I never smoked weed. I was like, how did I become an addict? This thing that didn't even exist in my family. So eventually and for me, even if I didn't write it for myself, I'd been in practice for 10 years. It was not a scheduled drug. My colleagues were like, oh yeah, you've got night shift, here's a prescription. So it was too easy. And so I finally surrendered my medical license in order to deal with the addiction. And that of course had other consequences of, I had to wait 2 years to get it back while proving sobriety for 2 years. You know, I went through bankruptcy and foreclosure. I lost my homes, the lake house, the city house, all the things on paper. And the irony of it was when I had all the things, I still felt miserable. And yet the gift of that time in my life was that I realized that no matter what, I always had food in my stomach, a roof over my head, and people who loved me. And it put me back to ground zero and gratitude and recognizing what truly mattered. And so rebuilding a life, making sure to never lose the things that mattered, that was the key.
Wow. So now, you know, I am grateful that you've taken us through to part of the darkest moments of your life, because with that, you're shedding light for others who might be on the verge of that or in the process, you know, to see that, yes, you can come out of it. And the biggest lesson that we're learning from all of this is that you're using your personal journey as a pathway to help to prevent others. Because as we said, you know, one of the challenge that brought you there in the first place is part of the culture of our specialty. Night, day, afternoon, night, day. You know, you have a shift today, you have a shift tomorrow. Your shift today might be a morning shift, tomorrow is a night shift. So it's daytime, the sun is glaring, I need to get rest. Because what I'm doing, I have to be on high alert. And so that's what brought you into that situation in the first place. So now, you know, there's still, I mean, years here, we still have emergency medicine. We still, as a matter of fact, in my group where I'm working with, we have a lot of people who just graduated and, you know, they're starting their journey as attendings, as we would say. You know, you finished your residency, now the training part is over. Now it's real life. Like, you know, no guidance directly. So your story is one that's powerful to help them along their journey. And then, you know, because you're right, you've described it as the 5 to 7 year itch when you're looking back. And I really looked back at my 10 years and I said, wow, I felt like I was in a fog, which is what I describe it as. Like, I'm coming out of this fog. I'm in my second, you know, 10 to 20 years as an attending, as we would say, you know, so I'm beyond that. But I looked back in those first 10 years, you're right. It was a fog. And I describe it every time when I'm being interviewed. I said, I felt like it was a fog. You know, I got here, but I knew there was more, but I couldn't figure it out. And there had been periods where, you know, I did go through like, wow, I think, and I look back like that was depression. That's what that was, you know, not understanding, you know, feeling that guilt. Well, now I'm able to do this. Others who, you know, aren't able to do as much, but I'm not as happy as they are. Why is it that they are so much happier? Not that I don't feel like they deserve to be happy. I'm very happy that they are, but why am I not as happy? So, you know, this wonderful school that you're building, or have built, I should say, Med School for the Soul, it really is important for us to recognize that it's here for us physicians, because we're all going to go through that phase. And we want us to all make it through and recognize the signs, you know, that appears during that phase of your life.
And, you know, the people, the residents coming out, just becoming attendings, they're exactly in the right place and time, and it will take them a couple of years
Mm-hmm.
You know, because right now they're still in the, oh my gosh, I have to prove myself as an attending. And then a couple of years later, once that settles, they'll come into that fog period. And it's like, yeah, like our whole specialty, our whole, like medicine, healthcare in general, loves people who are addictive because we are perfectionists. We are we're workaholics. We
Yeah.
have, I mean, but it's a socially acceptable addiction to be a workaholic. It's
Mm-hmm.
socially acceptable to be, and so it's sanctioned as, oh, it's okay because you're doing something good for society. And yet it's not, because it's limiting a part of ourselves. It's ignoring a whole part of ourselves. And the journey through burnout is so personal. We all are angry at the system, and yet what bothers you about the system is different than what bothers me about it. And so through the initial 8-week course, we each get in touch with, well, what is it? What's my core value? Because burnout, it comes from our moral standards being crossed. But what is it? What's the core value? So what is a moral ethical dilemma? It's a core value that's not being being crossed or being ignored or not being filled. So what's those core values? And so even though I'm using the template of my journey, it's all about each person figuring out what their core values are, what's missing for you in healthcare in the way you practice it. Because, we could be 10 of us in the same practice and we all have a different thing that bothers us about it. So yeah, it's putting the humanity and the heart back in healthcare, because they left out the soul through medical school and residency, and it's time.
I love it. And that goes along with the question that I've, been asking. When we talk about the organization, I believe the organization, of course, is built up of many individuals. And organizational self-care is just as important as individual self-care. So what would you say? What are your insights on organizational self-care?
Yeah, I would say right now it's almost non-existent, first of all. And when organizations work on self-care, it's all in silos. You've got the nursing, you've got the physicians, everything is siloed. And yet the reality is, in the emergency department especially, I know that I can do nothing without my nurses. I can do nothing without my x-ray tech. I can do nothing without the CAT scan. It's like I am just one part in that. And so the very first component of organizational self-care is to break down the walls and this is where I'm going next, is I desire to work with the Mayo Clinic. Some hospital systems, because of how much they're losing because of burnout and the cost of recruitment, and to bring them to a level where it can be Disney World, the happiest place on earth, and the Ritz-Carlton, ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen in a hospital system. I am a stand that healthcare is for healing, and it must be cross-sectional. You cannot do self-care in one area. Yes, you might need pockets of like this time is for physicians, this time is for nurses. But until we speak, we look at each other as humans and go, wait, you wanted to become a nurse? What? Why? Like, oh, you wanted to be, okay, wow. Like, it's important to you to connect to patients. So you're going to take a few extra minutes to talk to people, and you're going to come back and tell me as a physician something that the patient didn't tell me. Oh my gosh. Together we can be greater than the sum of our parts. So organizational self-care, yes, it's, sure, it's about like giving them a place to work out and, time off. But the thing is, you want to make the work environment so good that even if someone offered them a 20% raise, they would be like, no, this is my family. This is my home. Yes. And that is true organizational self-care.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. You're right. It's an environment where everyone individually and collectively, you're working as one towards the same goal. And you not only appreciate, but you exemplify the mission and you feel it within your heart. You're not just doing it because you're told to, you're doing it because you want to. That's it. So now that we've talked about the organization, we know individual self-care is just as important. So what are you doing for your self-care?
Oh, well, right now, last week was my birthday, so my mom is out here visiting. So that's part of my
Woo,
self-care.
happy birthday.
I was like, can I stay 29? Yes, I'm still 29 and holding for 20 something
Yes.
years.
All
We're
right.
going to go with
Yep, that's right. We just
um,
celebrate anniversaries of
that.
the
That's
birthday.
right. It's the anniversary of my 29th birthday. Yes.
Yes.
So self-care for me, again, this was me getting back to my core values, and connection is one of my core values. So whether it's with you, whether it's with my patients, whether it's with my family, to truly like be there and be present. And sometimes self-care is just getting some extra sleep. Sometimes self-care is getting out in the sunshine and just, the ER, they built on a new addition, and there's a door out there with some sunshine, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm over here to see a patient. On my way back to the next patient, I'm like, let me walk outside for 30 seconds and then just reset. And our culture is so about work and work and work, but they don't realize, like, when you take a break, you actually are more productive. And that break doesn't have to be, I'm going to go for 10 minutes, but like literally 30 seconds. Sometimes it's turn on a little bit of music in between patients. It's something that mentally just takes me to a different place. And it's like, oh, and now I'm back. So being present and connecting, and self-care sometimes is just staying home.
Yeah.
It's not all spas and pedicures, and those are amazing too. Don't get me wrong. I love massages. And the thing is, our whole industry is a marathon, not a sprint. And we keep thinking that if we do just this little thing here, this little thing here, we'll be okay. No, like, this is a lifestyle. And it takes a lot of unlearning what we learned in medical school and residency, which is we don't count, we don't matter, our sleep doesn't matter. So we've got to unlearn that and learn new habits. And sometimes you just have to start small, of like, oh wait, really? I can take an extra 10 minutes and journal in the morning. What? Sit in front of the fireplace at night when it's cold outside. Yeah. Self-care is whatever fills your cup.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to look like anyone else's.
That's it. I love it. And that's the truth. Self-care is an individual journey. Your self-care does not look like anyone else's, because it's personal, and it's the essence that brought back. Like you said, when you graduate, or after a couple years in life, you're filled with different layers, mom, doctor, this, that. And you're like, self-care is you going back to, what is it that I loved to do when I was like 8, 9 years old? That just really made me feel great. Was it reading books, novels that aren't directed at your specialty or your career only, something for fun? That's self-care. Bring it back. That's what I say. Bring it back. Alrighty. So now I have my fun question.
Okay. Well, I want to add one last thing to that, which is one thing that really shifted a lot was to start listing at least 5 to 10 things every night that I did well that day. Because as a woman, the minute I lay my head down on the pillow, it seems like everything I didn't do would come up for me to remember. And so I learned to do 2 things. One is I would turn on the voice note memo on my phone, and I would literally just list everything that came up that I was like, oh, I didn't do, or I have to do it. And by getting it out of my head and into the recorder, I could then relax and not worry about forgetting it the next day.
And having it on repeat in your mind throughout the night.
Yes, and that would keep me up. Like, oh my God, I have to. Okay, brain dump, we're done. And the second was to list, okay, well, what's 5 things I did do today that I'm grateful for, that I did well? And it was like, whew, like that brought my nervous system down to like, okay, I'm not such a failure. It's okay that I didn't get to those 5 things. Look at the things I did do. So thank you for letting me add that.
Oh, absolutely. No, that's very important, because our minds like to go towards the negative. And it's not until you start writing or start dictating or verbalizing the positive that you realize, like, whoa, I did more positive today than the 3 to 4 negatives that my mind keeps reminding me about. So it brings you into that zone either of feeling better, or the zone of neutrality, where you're no longer in the zone of negativity, you're such a failure, look at it, there you go again, you can't accomplish anything, all the things that are the chatter that goes on into our mind. So that's just as important for self-care, because it really is alignment of mind, body, and spirit. So being able to really get that mind into focus is a very powerful and important aspect. So absolutely. But even though you added that, I'm still not going to stop. I still have to ask.
Please don't stop. I love you.
Absolutely. I want to know, if you weren't a doctor, what would you be?
I think I would be a dancer.
Ooh, I love it. I have a couple dancers. We must be put together a dance group. A couple people that are dancers.
Which is fun, because I love to dance. It's the one place that I feel so alive. Like I haven't taken dance lessons, but when people are always like, "You're such a great dancer," and I tell them, it's because I'm not dancing to the music. The music literally dances me. I let it move through my body. And I was just like, yeah, I feel so alive. Like I'm that crazy person who'll be first out on the dance floor when it's empty. Then when it gets crowded, I'm like, okay, I'm out.
Kindred spirits. Yes, I am that person also. Cool. There are a couple of us. I think that Dr. Mariela Torres, that interviewed her a couple weeks ago, she's salsa queen. She's like, as soon as it's on, she loves to dance also. And she's following Chi and Dr. Nikki Grayer, all dancers, all of us will all be on the dance floor together. I love it.
Party in New York City. Let's go.
Oh my goodness. Love, love, love. All righty. So, you have taken us on a journey throughout your life, through the highs and lows, and how you're using this entire journey to really help our doctors out there. And you've built this wonderful, wonderful program that you have that's going on in a couple of weeks. So tell them all about this wonderful program that you have set up.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So Medical School for the Soul, the first 8-week container, it's a group container, so that you feel like you're in fellowship, again, to break down that I'm alone and I'm different feeling. And it's 8 weeks that takes you through tapping into your core values. And I call it Physician Know Thyself, because they make us know everything and everyone else. It's time to get back to know who am I? And then the second component is tapping into power. Well, okay, now that I know who I am, how do I tap into that powerfully and bring that into the world? And then the third part, and it's all just a seamless transition, is like, okay, creating a life by design. How do I translate when I say to someone, I want integrity in a way that lands for them? Because it's like, well, I want communication. Well, they think communicating once a week by email is communication, and I want communication, by phone. So it's like, it's taking our inner world. So it's deconstructing all the things and labels, core values that we think are ours, that were actually given to us by medicine, by our family, and go, okay, who am I? And so it's 8 weeks from that nagging feeling of what's missing into stepping into, oh, okay, this is who I am. I can feel fulfilled, and I can see it for what it is. I'm not alone. And I've created friendships for life through here. Yes. And I now see the 3 core patterns that have been running the show through my whole life. And it's 8 weeks in a small container of no more than 20 physicians. And it's $5,000. It's 8 weeks. It starts October 14th. It ends before the holidays. And it gives you that peace of mind, like where you can go into the holidays and go, I got this. Oh, yes. My family, my in-laws. Imagine going through the holidays from a whole different perspective of like, oh, okay, I see you. I see what's going on here. This is the play. This is the script we're on. And I feel rested, and I feel less stressed, and I feel peaceful, because I'm not trying to prove myself anymore.
And so essentially, you'll get back into feeling in charge of you. There's so many of the loss of control that occurs throughout these years. So this is bringing it back, where you now have a lot of that control within yourself. I love it. So, how can people find this? How can they find you? Yeah, so that I'm pretty sure that a lot of people are going through this like, wow, yes, you know what, Dr. Gigi, you are right. This is how I'm feeling. And I know that this program's coming up. I need to find out, where can I get in?
Yes. So you can find me on Instagram, Dr. Gigi Samed, DRGIGISAMED, and it's in the link tree in the bio. You can put in waitlist for Medical School for the Soul. I'll be opening up registration in about 10 days. You can find me on Facebook. Anywhere you want to find me, I am there. I also have a website, www.drgigisamed.com. So I am here, and I cannot wait. As one of the women in the last cohort said, she said, I went from feeling like I had a million balls in the air to realizing that I'm at the center spoke of the wheel, and everything gets to go on my time. And so, yeah, like, it's life-changing on so many levels.
I love it. She's taken back so much control that everything is going on her time. She's no longer juggling. She's centered, and she gets to be the center to make the wheel move, not the wheel making her move. I love it.
Exactly.
Powerful, powerful, powerful. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Gigi. This is wonderful. I know those of you guys who are listening are like, oh, wow, that was great. Where can I find this? I wasn't able to get all of this. The interview, I had to tap in and out because I'm at work or I'm doing something. That's fine. This wonderful interview is available on our Your Caring Docs website. That's URCARINGDOCS.com. Select podcast, and then you'll see Dr. Gigi's beautiful face. Just hit the link, yes, to listen here, and you'll be able to hear this full interview there. And don't forget, if you do have an Apple device, to leave us one of those wonderful 5-star reviews. I think that this was a very powerful interview, very revealing, and very informative and needing for those of us who are going through different phases of our life, the fog, the insecurity, the wondering what's next. This is one of those interviews where you want to listen to this again and then be able to tap into the resources that Dr. Gigi has in her wonderful Med School for the Soul. If you are a physician and you're like, oh my gosh, I have, this wonderful things that I want to let others people know about, absolutely send me an email at drbeckford@yourcaringdocs.com to book to be on the show. Please do keep in mind we are booked 3 months in advance because there's so many wonderful doctors out there. I get the honor and privilege of highlighting all my wonderful docs who are doing amazing things inside and outside of clinical medicine. Just like you see what Dr. Gigi is doing here. In medicine, she is EM, she's working and helping outside the clinical walls. She's helping the heart of medicine, the heart of healthcare, saving us docs one doctor at a time, putting the heart back into the healthcare system. So I thank you guys for watching. Thank you, Dr. Gigi. Do you have any last words for us before we leave?
Just know that there's always light at the other end of the tunnel, that wherever you are, however you feel, there's hope, and I'll hold that hope for you until you can see it again. If you need anything, reach out. We're all sisters in arms. We're all in the same field. Don't ever feel so alone. We're here. And thank you so much. And I can't wait for like a dance party date in New York City.
Hey, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for watching and for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.